the ecosystem currently for the local manufacturing, the local manufacturers who produce in India, there is a adequate ecosystem whereby the supply chains are well established. However, when it comes to import of electronic components, by and large, the industry is dependent on procuring the components from outside on their own. One of the suggestions here would be that some of the Taiwanese companies should look at forming bonded warehouses in India, whereby the availability of components, imported components, becomes easy to the Indian manufacturers, and therefore, we can take advantage of the supply chain from Taiwan. And this spans across several component verticals, whether it is printed circuit boards, in chip components, the passive components like capacitors, resistors, inductors, etc. As Mr. Goel also earlier mentioned, and even our Secretary, Mr. Ajay Sahni, had mentioned, there is tremendous scope for ATMP, and therefore, even in the ATMP, the supply chain will have to be developed through wafer supply. And of course, you have the largest fab factory in the world in Taiwan through TSMC. So, a supply chain needs to be established for wafer supply and other components or raw materials that are required for the ATMP or the overall industry.
Regarding components, I think this is actually the most important area where Taiwan and ELCINA should be cooperating more. But I can say that I'm not very happy with the amount of cooperation we have been doing till now. So while the investments have been growing, I think there is a huge opportunity in components between India and Taiwan. And ELCINA itself has been trying over the last many years to facilitate JVs and partnerships. I would really like to say that ELCINA is ready to handhold with the Taiwanese companies and also the medium and the small companies. But I think the large companies are able to find a way when they want to set up their business in any country. And it's the same for India. But I think it would be really nice if we could have more of the medium companies and the small companies of Taiwan come to India, and we assure them that we will give them, support all through. We also support, Invest India. We also support MIT as an industry association, and be assured of that. Number one. Number two, I would say that the biggest opportunity right now, of course, is in the area of the printed circuit board. I think we really need to enhance our capacity to manufacture PCBs in India and set up an ecosystem for PCB.
As Mr. Rajoo Goel has said, and Mr. Ajay Sahni has also mentioned, that 100 Smart City mission launched by our Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi, is under the progress, and the total spending by the government would be, about $14 billion, which is a huge amount, and it will converge, 100 smart cities and rejuvenate about 500 cities across India. So, as long as the demand is concerned, all the state-of-the-art technology needed in the development of these smart cities have opened up a huge, opportunity or huge avenue of manufacturing these required gadgets in making these cities smart. People in Taiwan and people in India, manufacturers, those who are already into manufacturing of these kind of gadgets, and those who are looking for Indian companies, those who are looking to be a part of manufacturing these kind of smart city gadgets, can look for a JV or technology transfer from Taiwanese company, and this could be a win-win situation at both the levels. Smart healthcare and smart education are the two most high demand technology in today's urban India. On the top of it, we are also seeing a huge demand in engineering as well as in the agriculture segment, because 65% of the land today is agricultural land in India, and there is a huge demand of technology adoption in agriculture, wherein the scope is too big, so that avenue is also opening up.
IESA being basically Electronics and Semiconductor Association, and a lot has been talked about electronics component and so on and so forth. I want to bring few points about basically overall chip design ecosystem. As probably all of you know, is that India is probably one of the largest design center of the world in terms of the chip development activity, chip design activities, and probably Taiwan is probably the largest in terms of the basically taking the designs and basically manufacturing them into basically physical chips. So 2 points I wanted to make here. If you look at Taiwan TSMC, it's probably about basically does $35 billion of business today, right? So one long-term strategic direction we can take between two countries is that basically, let's say in next 5 to 10 years, we together develop a vibrant, fabulous ecosystem of startups and fabulous companies in India, where 10% of basically TSMC capacity is basically supplied by the fabulous companies in India. So today, in today's terms, that will be about $3.5 billion. Maybe 5 years down the road, this will be about $5 billion opportunity. And looking at the changes in the geopolitical scenario, and India being one of the largest consumer of these semiconductors, this might be a very strategic moves between two countries which we can make to basically secure the future supply chain, as well as basically take the advantage of each other's strength. India being fabulous design center for the world, convert that into fabulous companies which can provide the volume basically business to companies like TSMC and UMC, right? So what I'll submit to all of us, including basically Saurabhji, Ajay Shawani and the leadership from the Taiwan, that if we can put a roadmap where we say 5 to 10% of TSMC volume will come from the Indian fabulous companies. That's point number one I wanted to make, right? Second, I think a lot of people alluded to ATMP opportunity, right? So if we look at the numbers which Amrit sir also talked about, today we are about consuming $36 billion of electronics component today, right? If we do basically divide and get it this thing, so ballpark we have about 5% of this consumption can be attributed to the packaging and testing part of it. So if I take basically 5% of $36 billion, that's a $1.8 billion opportunity, which is basically sitting basically for the consumption of the only packaging and testing activities in India. And if we look to other factors, one thing is basically the policies which Saurabh Garsa talked about. And second is basically, if you look worldwide, ATMP OSAT business, right? It's a very tough business, right? A typical profitability of the ATMP OSAT business is basically somewhere around 5%. So if we combine these two factors, the demand of $1.5 billion of OSAT requirement, MIT's policy, and this being a tough business, I think exploring either basically setting up a ATMP plant or basically doing some kind of a collaboration might be a win-win situation where the incentive under the policies can help OSAT companies in getting better basically return on their money, which is what basically companies should look at when they are setting up the overseas operations, right? They do it for generating profits, and I think these policies can help them in basically solving some of those problems, right?